Okay, hi guys. So this morning I'm gonna do something different for my channel. I'm going to show you how I make my kimchi. I want you to notice by my arms and hands here and by my picture and my avatar there that I am not Korean, not South or North or anywhere near there. This is just something my husband, when he was stationed in South Korea, he liked to eat, obviously. And I started making it before he even came home. He was there for, I don't know, a year and a half or so, a little less. But anyway, and I started just working on it because, you know, we eat at restaurants sometimes, especially out here in San Diego, you'll find lots of good restaurants. But there are some items that you will need to find that might be difficult for you to find depending on where you live, I suppose. But it's really good. And the way I make it is a mix of, I like to watch Kimchi, her channel. I'll link the recipes that I've seen of hers for her kimchi. I even have her book. Actually, you can kind of see it peeking out here. But this is not based on either one of those things. It's kind of a mix of her emergency kimchi that she made one time that she was visiting Mexico, and she likes to make her kimchi wherever she goes. And then her basic kimchi recipe. Kind of. And so it's just basically whatever I feel like doing, but there is a basic recipe for it. Again, no porridge, so it's really easy to make. It's kind of like the fresh kimchi you would make, I guess. Some people like to make fresh kimchi and you just kind of eat it right away or maybe the next day. As a side dish, obviously. But I still let it ferment. So that's the difference, I guess. Again, I haven't ever tried it with the porridge other than, you know, and you buy it maybe in a jar that I'm sure they make it with the porridge to begin with. But everybody that has tasted this from whatever walk of life they are say it's the best kimchi they've had. So I don't know if that's just because it's fresh, it's from home, and maybe they don't normally get a homemade kimchi, right? And mine is old. So I just finished up a bottle that was almost over a year old because it just took a while to eat, because sometimes what happens is if you don't really quite like it, just let it keep sitting out in your fridge. Obviously it's in your fridge. Let it keep fermenting and it just gets better and better. So mine is spicy. Some people say that their kimchi isn't spicy, which I thought kimchi was supposed to be spicy. So I don't know. I guess it depends on where you're from and how you like it. But again, all that stuff you can play with. So I just wanted to show you kind of some of the jars I have here, because this is the size of jar that I like to use. It's the bigger, I think, half-gallon jar that I like to keep my kimchi in. So this kimchi right here, I just wanted to show you, I made in March, and we haven't eaten it yet. It just, this is how it looked. It was all full, and then it starts kind of going down because it's getting more fermented and breaking down a little bit. Makes a little more liquid. This one actually kept putting out liquid, which my other ones never did. And people always say that, okay, be careful when the first overnight that you leave it out, it ferments and sometimes the juice kind of bubbles up out of the jar, which is normal. But none of my other ones ever did. And this is probably my, I don't know, 10th, 12th batch, maybe 10th batch of making. So kind of interesting. But this is the one that I made right before that. This one I made in November. So last November, and this is what's left. So yesterday I cleaned out the jar that this stuff was in because it was really hard to get. It was way down here, and this is the jar I'll use today. So I always like to keep a jar that's ready to go for like a few months later. So my kimchi is pretty aged, and that's the other thing. You can age it however long you want. Like the one that was a year old, a year and a half, it was so good. But most of the time people eat it before that, right? So this one is, again, from November. This one's from March, and I made it in March when the whole pandemic hit, because I thought, oh, I need to have some kimchi, I need to have something that's gonna last, right? And you can make kimchi fried rice. I've shown other videos where I make gimbap or kimbap or onigiri, whatever you want to call it, and you just saute some with some tuna or just saute it by itself. It's really good. And this is what was left that didn't fit in this little jar, and you can see that the jars are upside down, the lid. It's because the kimchi needs to breathe a little bit. It doesn't have to. I mean, you can put it in a jar like this with a lid that's, you know, static, but it was just a tip I picked up a long time ago from I don't even know where, and it's worked great. So it'll breathe a little bit. Like if it has enough gases in here that need to come out, it'll just come out because the lid is kind of not super secure, right? It's not applied the way you're supposed to. It should be like this, right? And I apply it upside down, and it just keeps it. It's not gonna explode. It's not like kombucha. Kombucha is another thing I used to make. I finally let that go because it was just too much work. Every week I was making kombucha. So this does a lacto fermentation process where it needs a little air. It's not like canning. You know, you're not gonna can it and then have it sealed super tight, because that's a whole other kind of thing. So don't do that with this, okay? Don't do that. It's kind of like the pickles that you would make, like. Just with the lacto fermentation process, you just kind of leave them and it gets a little air, and just like kombucha, okay? So this is what's left that didn't fit in there. And I want to take a bite so you guys can hear how crunchy it is, but at the same time, it's 5 in the morning and I'm not in the mood for kimchi, but maybe I'll take a small bite of a little piece here. But I want you to just kind of take a look at it. You can kind of have a better idea of what's left. So obviously it's not like, look how fermented and like just nice it is. And it works really well. I mean, like I said, I had other ones that were super old. Let me see if I can. You can hear that? Ooh, that's spicy. Okay, let me finish my bite. I'll be right back. Oh, that'll put some hair on your chest. Ooh, usually I eat it with rice, and usually I don't even eat it just like that because it's just too much. It's too spicy for me. But anyway, I make it spicier because my husband likes it that way and my older son. So, the things you're gonna need, and there's a couple things that you have to have that's not gonna work out otherwise. So, you have to have your pepper flake, and this is not Italian, you know, pepper flake, like the kind of thing you buy at the store. This is red pepper powder, coarse, you know, I believe they call it gochugaru, I'm not 100% sure, but it looks a little different. If I find links for you guys like on Amazon so you at least have an idea, I will do that, but I've had this forever. Hopefully you can kind of see, it's not the same as your pepper flake that you would get for Italian food or things like that. So red pepper powder, the coarse one, they have it in different types, so you want it a little thicker. So I have this one picked up at H Mart. We have a H Mart locally. And the other thing you have to have is your fish sauce. I think some people use soy sauce. I think Munchie just came out with a new way of making it so it's vegan, and I think she makes some kind of broth or something, and you can watch one of her videos. But for this, basically fish sauce and that are like the basic things. And then let's talk about other things that are super basic, and then everything else you can kind of play with. So we have green onion. Ooh, that kimchi still has me coughing here. So we have green onion, and for every 2 pounds of napa cabbage, I use 3 or 4 stalks. So I have like 7 stalks here, just eyeballing, because I'm gonna make 4 pounds. 4 pounds really fills up this jar really nicely, so I like that. So I'll give you the increments for 2 pounds, because if you want to make a little bit and see if you like it, right, you have that. So we have, so let me just say for 2 pounds, you need 3 or 4 stalks of your green onion. And it's not typically green onion that they use. They usually use a different type of onion, like chive thing, that is harder to find. So I like the green onion, and I'm going to stick with it. So if you can find the other type of onion that she would recommend, go ahead. But I use this guy. You only need a 1/4 cup of julienned carrots. So I have a fresh carrot here. I buy them loose carrots. I don't buy them in a bag, so I picked out the one I like. You need garlic for sure. 10 cloves. So I'd probably use a whole head and maybe a little more, but for the double of the recipe. But you need 10 cloves of garlic. The other thing I would say is a 100% must is your ginger. And I don't remember using ginger the first few batches I made because I kept forgetting. But ginger is really great to have. So fresh ginger, not pickled or anything weird like that. Fresh ginger. And not this much. You need a very little amount. But I use ginger for a lot of different things. I even threw some in my garden. It started growing. So yeah, so ginger. And of course you need your napa cabbage. And napa cabbage looks like this. And if you buy it at a Asian market or even a Mexican market, you might get it for like 50 cents a pound. But if you buy it at your local store, it's going to be $1.50, $1.80 a pound, because they don't use it that often, I guess. So this is a nice 4-pound cabbage that I found at my Mediterranean market, and so I got it for a very great price. So we're basically going to use that whole thing. I'm going to chop it up in small pieces. It's not your typical, if you saw mine was already cut up, that's how I do it. And the other thing that is nice to have, but you don't have to have, so this is optional in my book, but these are basic, you have to have this stuff, right? Is a little Korean radish. I don't know the actual name for this. I guess I could look it up, but look how cute, because he's green and white, and you do not need, like, this is the smallest one they had. It was very inexpensive, but I'm like, I literally need like this much of it, this smallest piece, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So I'm gonna wash everything, put away my kimchi, and we'll get to the actual process. You need a little sugar. And usually she looks like demerara sugar, but you can use regular sugar, it doesn't matter. And some salt, basically, like sea salt or something like a kosher salt would be good. I'll be right back. Okay guys, so I always start with my cabbage, because this is basically the only thing you're going to cut. We're going to salt it and let it sit for a while to start kind of breaking down a little bit, and then the salt helps, you know, clean it up and all that kind of stuff. So I want to show you my basic kimchi gear. You're going to need like a big bowl. So this is a big, huge Tupperware bowl that I've had for decades, and I've never really used it other than for my kimchi. So it's a huge bowl, but you know, depends on what you have. You might can buy it with a smaller bowl. And then I have this thing I bought at H Mart. It's just a colander, but it's a really big one. So we can rinse it out. And these are my kimchi gloves. And I don't know if you can see, the fingertips are kind of redder than the rest of the gloves because they go way high up, and I don't have to touch the kimchi when we start doing the mix, because you need to mix your kimchi in with the spice mix that you make. Not in this bowl, but in this other one. And I just wear gloves for that part. So I'm gonna have my colander here ready, because what we're gonna do is chop this up. So I've already rinsed this, but we're gonna wash it even more than that. This is a big guy. I think last time I had 2 smaller cabbages, so it might be easier to work with. But what we're gonna do is just cut this guy in half. So I'm just gonna go wherever, just to give it a cut in half. And all you have to do is that much. You don't have to keep going, because by this point, all you can do, you can just pull it apart. Ooh, how cute. And then from here, I do another part. And normal kimchi, you would just basically stop there, or maybe cut that in thirds, and then you start putting your spices in between each layer, and it's a big piece like this. But that's not at all what I do. So again, do what you like. I mean, I post my kimchi on my Instagram, and so people are like, oh, can you show me? I'm like, you want to see how a Mexican, Puerto Rican makes kimchi? I guess. But so this is to my taste. And I guess one thing that might be nice is that maybe it's more to a Western taste, but at the same time, I'm Mexican Puerto Rican. I don't know if I have a Western taste. I just like what I like. So this, I can see this is a big, big guy. So I'm going to cut this even more right here. And then we're just going to cut it into pieces. Just little chunks like that. So if you can kind of see the size of them. And if you want it smaller than that, cut it even smaller. I just want to see if there's still some core on this one. This one looked like the core went through kind of a lot, so I'm going to get rid of that too. And you know, a piece like this is fine. You just tear it. So I'll show you how to cut one of these quarters, and then I'll cut the rest of them off camera, not waste your time on cutting kimchi, or yeah, kimchi, cabbage. And again, just bite-sized pieces. And it looks really big at the beginning, but once it starts breaking down with the salt, and especially after time, it's going to be a lot smaller. So these pieces are a little bit big. I'm going to cut into them. And that's it. So I'm going to cut all of them just like that. So I'll go with the next one, and the next piece, and the next piece, and I will be right back. Okay, and that didn't even take 2 minutes, because my camera will turn off after 2 minutes of not doing anything. Because it's fast. That's not, you know, it's funny, I'm like, oh, kimchi day, but it's not really, I guess if you're making tons of heads, you know, it will be a big deal. I'm going to take this over to my sink and just rinse it out. Obviously it's a colander to clean everything, right? Because we have all these little bits, and who knows if there's like little dirt or something from when it grew there. So I rinse, kind of shake it out, rinse, shake it out, rinse. I'm just rinsing with water, okay? So I don't think it's the biggest deal. I think if you're making kimchi, then you probably know how to just rinse something with water. So I'm just gonna run some water over this a few times just to make sure it's really clean, and I'll be back. So my big bowl, I'm going to bring over my washed cabbage, and it's gonna take up this whole bowl, but by the time we're done with this, it'll shrink down quite a bit. So there's already some water in here. Obviously it's a colander where I try to strain it, but you know, how well good of a job you can do, I don't know. But so what you're supposed to do for every 2 cups or every 2 pounds of your cabbage, you're gonna add 1 cup of water and 1/4 cup of salt. Now I have these different salts. It doesn't matter, just a good, you know, I have this one because it's a big box, I'm gonna use that, but otherwise I have like this sal bahia, it's just fine crystals, like just sea salt, doesn't matter. So I need 1/2 cup. And I'm gonna put it on the top here, because when I pour the water, it'll help kind of bring it down. So I'm doubling the recipe, right? So for every 2 pounds, you do 1/4 cup. And a cup of water, so I have 2 cups of water here. And I'm just gonna pour that in there. And then go ahead and give that a mix so that the salt goes deep down into everything. So we're gonna let this sit in your salt for 1.5 hours, and every 30 minutes I'll come and just kind of move it around. So I usually set my timer for 30 minutes. And then I do this 3 times. Just hopefully that salt gets in there real good. And then I put my lid on it just to keep it nice and clean while it's sitting. Poor lid. I just made, I think, some beans when I was doing this, and I set it on the burner after it was done, and it was still hot, so it melted. But I just let it sit like that. So what I do in the meantime is I cut up everything else. So I'll come back with all the vegetables and we'll get that going. So all of these things you're gonna cut kind of small, and you do this whatever, however you like. Oh, where I put my knife. So for the green onion, normally what I do with every green onion, if there's one that looks kind of wilted, I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want anything old. I always, I already had green onion and carrot and garlic in my fridge, but I always buy everything fresh because I want it to be super fresh to go into the kimchi. So I'm just going to cut off the ends here. And I usually do them all at once, just make it faster. Obviously it's already washed and taken care of that way. And what I'm just going to do is slice them kind of at a diagonal and thinly. Okay, so I start at the base here, but you cut it however you like. Obviously you can cut one at a time. By the time you're done with this, I'm telling you, it doesn't take a lot of work, but it's, you know, something. I just slice it all up. And I have my window open and it's like rush hour, so that one doesn't look too good. Get rid of that. I'm not going to slice up every single thing for you because like julienne a carrot takes time, but I'll show you kind of what I do. And you can go from there. If anything looks wilted, I get rid of it. Like this piece too. Pretty much to the very end. Alright, so there's my green onion. And again, 3 or 4 for 2 pounds of cabbage. So julienne carrot, you only need a 1/4 cup of this, and you can do this however you like to julienne. I always get rid of the end there. I'm gonna give it a cut, and I'm going to kind of try to slice it thin. I know it's hard to see because it's on the back side of my knife, but I try to slice thin in this direction, all along the carrot. And I'm not the best at this, so my carrots usually end up really thick. Excuse me. And then I'll take a few slices, right? They're kind of skinny, and slice in the other direction. And that's where I try to keep it nice and thin. And I'm going to do this until I have 1/2 cup because I'm doubling the recipe, but you need about a 1/4 cup. As you see, mine are pretty thick, but that's as good as it's going to get for me. So I'll be back when I have a 1/2 cup. So again, I hope you have more patience for that than I do because I just leave it kind of big. So with this guy, I haven't cleaned it up like the carrot. I had peeled and, you know, washed and peeled it, but I'm just going to peel some. Again, you don't need this whole thing. And this is probably already too much. And I didn't write down my recipe again because you can do whatever you want. You don't have to have this. Like I said, you can just skip this. So for me, just that's probably enough. I don't know. And the first however many times I made kimchi, I never even used this, so that's another thing there. Just clean it up really nicely. And basically we're going to cut this up like our carrot. So I'm going to just slice it and slice it thin in one direction. I end up waking up my kids with all this chopping. Okay, let's pretend. And again, then this one's easier actually than the carrot to chop up. And then I'm going to go in the other direction. Really nice and small. And I'll just use that chunk. I'll probably cut up that whole chunk for this time around. So there we have that julienne. I'll do the rest of it and I'll come back. Next up, yay! I get to chop up all of this. Now, again, fresh. You can buy a jar where it's already chopped up, but that stuff has like preservatives in it and other things that I don't want to introduce into my kimchi because I want it to do its thing naturally, and I don't know what is in that. So I will definitely chop this up on my own. I'm always tempted to use a garlic crusher because I'm like, well, but at the same time, I think that gives a different texture than if you just use the garlic and a different flavor, right? Because it permeates things differently. So I'm just gonna chop up every single little clove, take its little cloves off, and then chop it up small, basically. Just dice it as small as you can. You know, I mean, this stuff is gonna get all pickled together, so you're not gonna get like a huge bite of raw clove unless you start eating them pretty early on. Because you can eat this right away fresh. You can eat it the day after you make it. You can start eating it. Usually, like I said, we leave it months before we even touch it. So I'm just going to dice up basically this whole head of clove. You need 10 per 2 pounds, so I'll be back when this tedious job is done. I have my little pile of garbage here. Last thing is this guy, and usually I take a spoon and I peel away the little skin on my ginger, but to be honest right now I don't care. I try to be real chintzy with it, right? But I'm just going to get as close as I can with my knife to do that. And then you only need 3/4 teaspoon to a teaspoon per 2 pounds, so not very much, and grated ginger. I suppose you can cut it up if you want, but I'm just going to use a little tiny grater that I have, but whatever cheese grater you might have would be fine. Just thinly, right? You just want this done thinly. Finely, should I say. And so I'm just going to bring this over, and I have this little cutie pie I got like at Sur La Table some, I don't know, a long time ago. And so I'm just going to grate this into the bowl, and I'll be back when this is done. Okay, I was just going to say it smells so good, but it's going to get really stinky in here in just a minute. So for every 2 pounds of your cabbage, you want about 1/3 cup of the pepper flake. Now, or more, so I do like a rounded 1/3 cup, so it's a good amount, and I'm doing 2 because this is double the recipe. I think last time my husband wanted even more, so I'll just add a little more. So there's that. And the last thing that we're gonna mix into this is our ripe fish sauce. So this one's almost done, this bottle, and I need 1/4 cup per 2 pounds. So I think this thing lasted a very long time. Okay. Do not get this on your person. It's really smelly. But, you know, I use it for all kinds of different soups and things. Your tom yum, you need the same stuff. And you know, so it's the 3 crabs. I don't know how you pronounce that. The one that I said we waited a year to eat, the kimchi, it's because we use the Lee Kum Kee fish sauce. And normally I love Lee Kum Kee. It has a little tab here. Great company, you know, has great stuff, but oh my goodness, that flavor of fish was like just immense. With this stuff, it's just like a little salty, a little, you know, flavor. It's not bad. It smells, but it's not the worst thing. That Lee Kum Kee one was really bad, in my opinion. So we haven't bought it again, but it just took a long time for that flavor to kind of settle for us to want to eat it. So again, 1/4 cup per 2 pounds. And I normally just mix this with something else, but I'll go ahead and mix it. And so this is it. This is the paste, basically. So again, no porridge. It's super fresh. You can mix this and eat it right away with your, once we get the salted cabbage going. But that's it. So I'm going to let this sit. I usually just kind of put a plate over the top just to keep it fresh. But this is, oh, you know what I forgot? Our sugar, a tablespoon of sugar. And like I said, I just use regular sugar, so let me just grab some sugar. Of course, my little sugar thing is almost done. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar in here because it's a tablespoon per. I'll be right back. So again, I prefer to use demerara sugar or kind of like the Mexican sugar, but I don't know where it is. So I'm just a tablespoon per 2 pounds. That hurt my heart because I don't want to spend any more time. I have to move on. I have other videos to make today, so I'm like, eh. But yeah, try to use sugar in the raw, that kind of sugar. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna let this sit. I'll come back when I show you that I need to turn the cabbage, and then we'll put it together, and that's it, guys. Okay, so I have this still sitting here. My alarm's about to go off, so I'm just gonna, and I don't know if you can see, it's kind of fallen down a little bit already, but just give it a good mix, get that salt. So this is our first half hour turning. So I'll set it for one more time, and another half hour I'm going to mix it up again. And then the last half hour, obviously we're just gonna be done and I'll rinse it out. So again, in half an hour, I'm gonna set my alarm. I'm not gonna come back and show you because it's basically I'm gonna do the same thing. Just take the lid off and give it a mix and let it go for another half hour, okay? So an hour and a half total. Okay guys, we are moving and shaking. I went to edit another video and forgot about this, that it went off. But okay, so look how much more, you know, it just has shrunk down. Obviously there's a lot of water in here too. So an hour and a half been soaking, moving it every half an hour. I'm gonna put it back in that same colander that I had showed you guys at the beginning and rinse it for at least, you know, 5 minutes or so, just really getting that salt out, because it did its job and now we need to get rid of it so you don't have super salty kimchi, right? So I'm just going to put it in the colander, rinse it out, and I'll be back. It'll be back in the same tub when you see it next. Just real quick, I just want to show you, obviously it's in the colander and I'm rinsing and I'm like scrubbing it like if it was laundry. You know, just going through it, really getting it completely rinsed. And that's why it takes a few minutes, okay? Okay, so now is the moment of truth. I'm gonna put on my super long kimchi gloves, any disposable gloves that you would like to use, or, you know, whatever gloves that are nice and clean. That, like, these are dedicated just to this, so that's why I know, you know, they're good to go. And I just kind of leave it sitting over this bowl for a little while, because even if I look at all the water that's still kind of collecting down there. So I just let it sit for a few minutes. And we're gonna bring this over. And then I have a jar. So again, you can sterilize it. It's not the biggest deal. Again, you're gonna kind of leave it open. I mean, it needs some air. It's not sealed tight like you would do canning, you know, if you're canning tomatoes or something, right? So with that, it has to be super sterilized, because you're gonna trap something in there without air and it could get really bad for you real quick. So super safe. Again, this smells amazing. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. So hopefully you guys can see everything. I'm gonna adjust this a little bit. So all you do, you already have this mixed up, you can give it another mix if you want, is grab like a little handful of your cabbage and kind of just rub it into your little spices here. Or, it's really spices, I mean, it's just vegetables, and then shove it in your jar. Now, if you're making a smaller amount, you get yourself a smaller jar, because you want to pack it in, okay? And then you come back and get another handful and just kind of rub, rub, rub. And this is why I'm wearing gloves, but I guess you could do it with a bare hand if you want to. If you're going to eat this right away, then you don't need to put it in a jar, right? As you can see, I'm just dropping it in for right now, but you are going to start packing it in. And you kind of want to do that from the beginning, but I don't want to stick my hand all the way down the jar right now. So I'm just, again, not too much, but just making sure every little piece has a little something on it, right? So you don't want just a handful of this stuff. You want to mix it in with your cabbage. And I just do handfuls at a time, because this way you're kind of assured, you're watching it, you're making sure every bit gets a little something on it. And like I said, you can eat this fresh. Now, if you eat this fresh, that fish taste is going to be very much fish taste right in your face, because you didn't give it time to kind of meld with all the other flavors and mellow out. So now I kind of start pushing down. You really want to push that down and get all the air out. And I'll continue doing this, grabbing a bunch, doing this, put it in there, push it down, and I'll come back pretty much when the whole thing is done. It doesn't take too long. Just keep going. And you can say there's no liquid in it right now. The liquid is going to come from the cabbage that keeps kind of leaching out from the salt and everything, and all the different things that are going to start breaking down. And it just makes a really nice brine. And yeah, so I'm just going to keep going a little at a time. I've never run out of this stuff, so if you do, I suppose maybe you can dump some back out and start trying to get the rest of your cabbage coated, but I've never run out of it. So just eyeballing it, putting it in the jar. Okay, I'll be back. Okay guys, so I'm pretty much down to the last of it. I just threw it all in here, and whatever's left in here I will just mix in. And there's still quite a bit of the chili paste here. I know this is too much to fit into this jar. So again, like I said, you can eat this fresh. It is not my thing. Nobody in my house likes to eat it that fresh. Again, my husband likes it to kind of mellow out, especially that fish flavor. So, but some people like to eat it that way. Make yourself some rice. Put a little kimchi on there. Get a little, what's that called? Maybe a little sesame seed sprinkled over the top. Okay, so as you can see, I'm pushing this down, pretty much filling it in as much as it'll go, but it's gonna overflow possibly. Like I said, not every batch of my kimchi ends up overflowing and bubbling, but they can. So I always leave just like the headspace of just that top part of the jar, you know? So really pack it in. And I do have quite a bit extra, so I'll probably put this in another jar on its own and maybe give it to the neighbor or something, because this is not something I would want to toss away. But again, like I said, we don't really eat it fresh, but you can eat it fresh, just like this if you want. So what I'm going to do is clean this up a little bit, clean up my hands and everything, and then we will jar it up so you can kind of see what we need to do, because we need to let it sit overnight. Some people like to let it sit out 2 days, 3 days. It just gets sour faster if you leave it at room temperature, but I usually just leave it out one night. The last time I did it 2 nights, just so it gets sour faster. And then you put it in your fridge, and the whole time that it's in your fridge, it's still doing its thing. It's still getting more sour. And again, that's why we, usually eat it months later, because we like it that way. And the sour, the older, it's great for fried rice. It's great for soups. If you try to put this in a soup like right now today, it's not going to have any flavor. The flavor's just going to go away from it. So you really do need it a little bit sour, at least a week old. But probably older than that would be better. Okay, well, that's just my experience. So I'm going to pause here, clean this up a little bit, and then show you what I need to do to get the air bubbles out and put the lid on. Okay, so the second amount, the little batch that was left, wasn't quite enough to fill up a Barilla, I think this is an Alfredo jar, but almost. So what I do is I take a very, very clean chopstick. I don't know, I couldn't think of the word. And I'll just pop that in there. Oh. And just go down around the jar and make sure air bubbles are out. And you can see them. You'll see like there's spaces, like gaps in there. So just make sure that those gaps, those air bubbles just kind of come up. And as you can see, there's already liquid. You saw that there was no liquid in this jar, right? It was pretty dry when we were kind of filling it in. But as the cabbage lets go of some liquid and things start getting happy together, you'll start getting more and more liquid. And I'll do this again before I put it away, so don't worry. But for right now, I just try to get rid of as much of the bubbles that are in there as I can, if I see any. And again, usually I keep my gloves on because I'm going to push it down again, but whatever. This part isn't as bad. Okay. And I'll do the same thing for this little jar too, just get in there and really pack it in. And then I'll take a spoon. Actually, I'll use a spoon. I'm not going to use my bare hand to push that down. Really make sure that's all pushed down and under the brine. The brine will continue to make more brine as this sits overnight. So there's that. I'm going to put it over here because I'm going to use that in a minute. And clean your jar, of course. So I just have a paper towel with a little bit of water. If this weeps overnight, like makes more juice, then you're gonna have to clean it up anyway tomorrow. But always try to keep your jars nice and clean. I'll clean this whole area all around here. Actually, let me just... And I keep it in a jar like this. Some people use a tub, whatever. This just works for my fridge. So that's why I do this. And it works like perfectly for 4 pounds of napa cabbage, as you can see. So again, I put my lid upside down just to give it a little breath. Especially right now, because it's going to start putting out juice, and you want to let that juice go somewhere instead of like exploding. So I'm just going to screw that on there lightly. I'm not tightening it up too much, just like that. And I'll be right back because I'm going to clean up this whole thing. Okay, so I'm pretty much done here. I have them on a plate because again, it's going to make more brine, and that brine will come out of the jar, and that's fine. It's never really happened, like I said before, in the past, but this last jar I did, even when I put it in the fridge, it kept coming out. It kept making more brine. So definitely put a bowl or something under it, just to keep it, from getting all over, because it's kind of pungent smell. So this one, again, I'm just gonna put the lid on it, but not too tight, because this one should have enough room to make its brine, so it's not the biggest deal, but I just have it on there. I'm not like completely screwing it down super tight, just a little something. And then you're just gonna leave them on your counter or wherever it is that they won't be bothered. I like to cover mine just to keep the little darkness out of there. And that's it. I'm gonna leave them overnight. So this is morning, so if I leave it overnight, it's gonna be a good 24 hours, not just like a few hours. And now I'm thinking I might even leave it 2 days. It just depends on how hot it is outside. One night is good. I mean, that's average, right? Some people leave it out 2 or 3 a week, whatever. Whatever it is that you like to do that. But I would say if this is your first batch, leave it out overnight and then just let it continue doing its thing in the fridge for the next week or two, because it might be a little too much. So again, just play with your taste, because then you're like, okay, that was too sour. We love our sour. We like it when it gets fizzy. After a little while, it starts getting fizzy when you go to bite it. And don't think that's weird. That's just how it is. You'll bite it and it's like literal fizz in your mouth, right? And then after that, that starts breaking down, and then it has a different texture. And as you heard, the one I chewed was, you know, how old is it? 6, 7, 8, 9 months? November to July. And you heard that crunch. It's still crunchy, you know? So, good stuff. But I'm gonna leave it alone, and when I come back, it'll be a day or 2 days from now. I'll let you know. I just want to check in with this because I was noticing, like I said, the liquid starts building up, and I can see earlier there was a space here, but I know it's hard to tell, but it's all liquid in there. I guess I could open. Oh, I don't want to mess with it too much, but yeah. So it's only been, what time is it? 7 o'clock, maybe 12 hours that it's been chilling here. And it's already doing its thing, so that's really great. It is a pretty warm day, and I barely turn the AC on right now. So anyway, yeah, I'll probably just leave it overnight then and then put it in the fridge. But in the morning I'll show you, because I'm sure it's going to start dripping out. Okay guys, as you can see, and as I can smell when I came down this morning, the liquid has come out. So I think this is good enough. Like I said, it's been pretty warm and in the 80s out here and humid. So let's uncover this. I can see that some of that liquid got on this towel. It feels kind of heavy. Yeah. And so all I do is clean this up. What I'm going to do is get another clean, let's get this. Look at this, look at this. It's starting to run out. I'll probably rinse this off. And there it is. Now, I don't know if you remember how full it was yesterday. There was actually a divot in the middle even. And now it's completely full. And it's just that liquid. And it'll continue to put out liquid as it's in your fridge. And you see it's kind of coming out. And I don't mind that. So what you want to do is keep your kimchi under the liquid as much as you can. The actual pieces. I would still give it another week or so before I would put it like in a stew. But as you can see, as I'm getting the air bubbles out, clearing the way, the liquid kind of settles in because it made pockets. And so what I would do is put like a little plate underneath, maybe with a paper towel for the next week or two, just for it to put out the liquid as it does. It might, you know, get on your fridge and you don't really want that because you have to clean it up. So again, taking all the bubbles out, squishing it down. I would normally use a spoon. And just pushing it down underneath. And that's about it. So you're ready to enjoy it. I'm telling you, my son eats this on his pizza. He puts it in his shin bowls, his shin cups, his fire noodles, his wherever you want to put it is good to go. Just with some rice. Put some out with some rice, maybe sprinkle a little sesame seed on there. Whatever you want to do. So it's good to go. And it's good for your tummy. And I know some other questions people have, and I, you know, can't really address this too much because it's never happened to me, but people want to know how you know if it went bad. So obviously, just like with kombucha or anything else, or pickles, if you see any kind of like black specks or like mold, that's not good. White, green, fuzzy, none of that's good. You can't really go by smell because, I mean, it smells good to me, but it's a pungent smell. So definitely just keep an eye out. Again, it shouldn't be sealed so tight that you're locking in possibly germs that are going to make a problem for you, because we're not canning this. It's just what it is. Just like any pickle jar that you have in your fridge, right? It's not super shut. Well, it is from the store, but once you open it. So, or your kombucha that just breathes a little air. So it needs a little air, it needs a little release, it needs a little air. And again, don't just leave it open. Like this will be fine for the meantime. But again, once it's open like this, it's not super tight. It's not airtight, should I say. So I'm going to put this in my fridge, and that's it, guys. So I hope my recipe is something that is attainable for you guys. I looked up on Amazon. There are a few different pepper flakes, the gochugaru, and then the fish sauce. So I'll just have the links just so you can kind of see what that looks like. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye now. Okay, my kids are giving me a minute. I'm just going to show you real quick how to do some really fast kimchi fried rice. Now you can do this however you like. There's lots of different ways. This is that older kimchi that I showed you. This stuff is sour. This is again from November. So you want about maybe a cup cup and a half of this, but I'm gonna squeeze the liquid out, the excess brine out of what I put in here, so something like that. I could probably just use the whole jar, to be honest, but I'm going to take that, I'm gonna let the liquid drain out. I'm gonna keep the liquid, we're gonna use that, and I'm gonna chop this up into smaller pieces, okay? And then we'll get started. Okay, with most stir fry, you have this on super hot, super high. This is just that cheap wok you get at IKEA that everybody has. And I'm just gonna throw in some butter. Now, this is to taste, but like 2 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons, whatever. I'm just cutting a chunk off. It looks to be about 2 tablespoons. And just let that melt down a little bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw in some onion. I just realized I don't have a spatula because any spatula you use with this is going to stain the kimchi. So that's just a little bit of onion. I use the same plate that I cut my kimchi up on because I don't want to do all the dishes. And I'm just gonna let this saute a little bit. I wish I had a higher burner, but this is as high as this burner gets, to be honest. But anyway, I'm just gonna brown this up a little bit, just till they start wilting a little bit, okay? And I'll be back. Doing that, I should put this away. Put away my butter, but I'm gonna throw in a little bit of gochujang. You do not have to use this. If you want to use garlic and not, you know, and last time I made this, I didn't even use onion, to be honest. That's an extra step. So I'm just using a chunk of this, like maybe a couple teaspoons. I'm gonna put it in with my kimchi liquid that I have in this bowl over here. I'm gonna turn the fan on, hopefully not too loud for you guys. And I'm gonna throw in this kimchi now. And we're gonna cook this down. So yes, this is a wok. It should be like flaming, you know, but I'm gonna cook this down for like 3 or 4 minutes until it starts kind of drying out a little bit. And again, I don't put garlic. My kimchi is pretty garlicky, but if you want to throw in some garlic, do whatever you want. This is your rice. I will be back. Oh, I'm gonna cough. This is getting cooked down real well. My goodness. Okay, so I have some old, you know, day-old jasmine rice here. That's what I'm gonna use. You can put your sauce in now. You can put it in after you do it. You know, however you want to do it. This is probably, I don't know if I'm gonna use it all, but a good 2 cups of that. And of course, this thing's gonna be too floppy. I'm gonna have to switch out and just be careful. So you can add, what's that stuff called? You need to have old rice, okay? Don't just cook rice and then throw it in here and think that's gonna work. It's gonna make mush. So this is a day old, and that's about good enough. I'm gonna try to separate it out. Again, I'm trying to be careful not to scrape my pan too much. But as crispy as you want it, you know, let it sit there for a little bit so it gets a little fried, a little crispy around the edges, however you want to do it. This is my liquid that has that gochujang in there. I'm going to pour this in here. Now, I didn't do this last time I made my kimchi rice. I just threw it together without any sauce, and that was good enough. But this just makes it that much better. So I'm going to continue doing this. And like I said, kind of flatten it out and let it sit and get a little char on that rice. And I'm going to do this for a couple minutes. If you want to make an egg, you can make a little area for an egg. You know, scramble a little egg, put it in there, let it sit a little bit, and then start cutting it up and get it in there. But I'm just doing this for now. Maybe I'll top it with an egg, a fried egg for my son, but that's about it. Alright, I'm going to keep doing this kind of thing until I think it's good to go. I think I'm done. So I'm going to turn this off. But again, like you see how I kind of flattened it out, just so it gets a little char, a little crispiness. And yeah, just serve it up. Have it for your breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, for snacks, whatever it is you want. Side dish. So good. Alright guys, I'll see you at the next one. Bye now.